Okay, so today we're going to be doing a double review. I'm going to be talking about Grey Sister, which is a fantasy. It's the sequel to Red Sister, which I read recently, as well as The House in the Cerulean Sea, which is a young adult, I'm going to call it a contemporary. It has fantasy elements to it, but that's really not the point of the book, so we'll call it contemporary. This will be a quick review because I don't have a lot of thoughts on either of these books, but I did enjoy both of them. There are timestamps in the description if you want to skip around, but we're going to start with Grey Sister, and I'm going to keep this spoiler free. This is a sequel, and I'll keep it spoiler free for books 1 and 2, and then I am reading book 3 as well, and if there's enough interest that I can do a spoiler-filled trilogy talk, or we can just keep it spoiler-free if you just want my general thoughts on how I felt about the book. Grey Sister was such a step up from Red Sister. I know that Red Sister has a lot of love. A ton of people loved Red Sister. I had very mixed feelings for it. Review will be linked there and in the description. I thought that the ideas in Red Sister were so cool, but I did not like Mark Lawrence's execution at all. And Grey Sister was such a step up. It was such a good sequel. A lot of my complaints from Red Sister were either resolved completely or at the very least much, much better for my taste in book 2. One of my biggest complaints about book 1 is that, well, actually my biggest complaint, everything that I didn't like about book 1, almost everything that I didn't like, can all be wrapped up in, I just felt the author's hand all over that first book. I felt like he was withholding information from me, not because it made sense to the story for me not to hear something, but because he wanted to keep some things to surprise me later. And I felt like there were certain conversations that were constructed to offer, to create a situation that didn't feel natural to what was happening. Just nothing, there were so many things that were being withheld or handed to me that just didn't feel natural to me. And oh my goodness, that is so much better in this book, at least for me. If you didn't have that problem, I don't know how you're gonna feel, but if you had the same problems I did with book 1, oh, I liked book 2 so much more. First of all, we're given so much more information. I felt so much confusion in book 1 because of the amount of information that was withheld from me, but book 2, we get so much world building, we get so much more information about the magic system, we get more context of the politics of this world and how the nobles act, and I won't say who because I don't want to be spoilery at all for book 1 as far as like who makes it to book 2, but we get POVs from some of the nuns that were training Nona in book 1, and it was so good. Nona as well, I really liked her in book 1, but I enjoyed her so much more in book 2. At this point, I guess she's a young teen, preteen, or early teen. You know, age is something that I still don't love the way Mark Lawrence is handling, because this is a very dark, gritty world, and these kids are being trained to be assassins, so they're naturally gonna grow up kind of fast. But it still kind of jars me because sometimes they act really mature and they say really clever things that I wouldn't expect someone their age to say, or they do things that I wouldn't expect of their age, and then sometimes they're really immature and have these very naive ideas. Sometimes I feel like they're their age, sometimes I feel like they're not their age at all. Maybe that's just a hard balance to have in this dark, gritty world where kids are still kids but have to grow up way too fast. I still don't love the balance that he's taking as far as portraying their age in this dark world, but that's a nitpick. It's not a huge deal. There's still so much about this world and magic that I don't fully understand, that I want more. I need more to wrap my head around everything that's happening, but he's done so much more for me as my preferences as a reader, as far as I feel like I'm starting to get a picture of this world. I feel like I'm starting to be able to see the world around me that he's describing because he's finally filling in the pieces. And we got information about certain things that we got information about certain things that I was really, really confused on in book 1. It's like, okay, so what is this thing that's very important? We know now, and the stakes were raised so much. Also, I think the pacing is so much better in this book. In book 1, sometimes I was interested and sometimes I really wasn't. And in book 2, I thought from the very first page it was so much more interesting, and I was so much more involved with everything that was happening rather than being a passive bystander. I was there with them, which I loved. But then about the halfway point, the last third especially of this book, I blazed through the ending of this story because stakes are raised and it gets so good. I just needed to know how it was gonna end after a certain point. And I was a bad buddy reader and I left everybody behind, and I'm so sorry, guys. Also, the setup for book 3. I'm so excited to read the third book. I'm definitely reading it. It was such a great sequel. It was almost everything that didn't work for me in book 1 was elevated or resolved in book 2. I still have nitpicks. I still have things that I don't love about the way Mark Lawrence writes, but I enjoyed this so much. Also, something that book 1 did great for me that I loved in book 1 was Nona's devotion and value for friendship that was amplified in this book. And I am loving the relationships. Mark Lawrence can write relationships well. I'm loving seeing these characters come together, have these very individual abilities and individual personalities that are meshing really well together and sometimes not meshing well at all. And it's so fun to fall for these different characters and see how they work together. I'm having a really good time now, and I'm really excited to see where book 3 takes me. I still don't know, I know I'm kind of gushing right now. I still don't know that I love this series on the level that so many people seem to. As of right now, as of having read 2 books, I'm not sure book 3 will make me put this on my favorite series list, but I'm having a great time, and I'm really excited to get to book 3. The House on the Cerulean Sea. I also had a really great time with this one. This is another series that book that people seem to love. So this is about, we follow Linus, this is also spoiler free, by the way. Linus, who is a caseworker for these specific orphanages for children who have magical abilities. And Linus goes to make sure that the conditions are safe, that the orphanage is being run well, that the kids are safe and healthy, and that the orphanage can stay up and running. So we do have magic in this world, magical abilities. The whole story is wrapped around magic, but the magic and the world are not the focus of the story. The focus of the story is what's happening within the characters. So Linus goes off, he gets this really high priority job. I think this is in the description of the book. I'm pretty sure it's fine for me to say. This kid is potentially threatening to the entire world. Potentially his very existence could cause a lot of destruction. I don't know how much is on the back flap, so I don't want to say too much. So Linus is given this really high profile case to go to this orphanage to make sure that it's safe, that the kids are cared for, that the orphanage is being run well, but also to make sure that this kid isn't going to destroy the world and doesn't need to be removed immediately. And it is such a sweet and heartwarming story, and I really enjoyed it. There are a lot of lessons that I think could connect with people in a lot of different areas of life. The author did an excellent job of finding little moments with the kids as well as with the adults that just they really speak to the heart. Naturally, if you guys don't know, you probably do because I talk about it a lot. We're near the end of our adoption, so we are going to be able to adopt very, very soon here. So that's on my mind a lot. And naturally, this general premise was written in a way that connected with me a lot. My heart for adoption. I naturally care a lot for these kids and for a lot of the more heartwarming moments. I also think that this author did an amazing job of writing the kids, giving them unique personalities, making them innocent and ridiculous and over the top and adorable and sweet and wonderful, and everything in the world is good. I do have nitpicks. I know that the magic and the world are not the point of this book, but There are so many things in this story that are so convenient, or that just kind of contradict, actually, or poke holes in the world. And they're things that could have been so easily resolved if the author would have just thrown in a couple of extra sentences here or there explaining things a little bit better. There was also one really big reveal that happens that was very anticlimactic because it was super obvious. So I do have nitpicks as far as more structural things. Like, it felt like the author had a story that he wanted to tell, and then he built a world around that story, but he didn't really care about the world, so he just did what he had to and then didn't really worry about making it stable. So there were things all over the book that I was like, okay, but why? Like, if phones exist in the world, why doesn't he have a phone? Why is he writing via letter if this is such a high-profile thing? Also, why was Linus even chosen for this after such little screening and such a small interview? Like, there were so many things in this book that it was like, okay, but why? And you kind of have to remove the whys, and you just have to accept that nothing's really going to be explained much, and you just kind of have to go with it because that's not the point. And that's okay. The author accomplished what he wanted to accomplish with this story, and he accomplished it very, very well. It's just everything else that I do care about. You know, I'm talking about my preferences as a reader, and my preferences, I want things to make sense within the world, and I want consistency, and I didn't love that. So this is kind of, I don't know how to even review this, because for me, part of my enjoyment was taken away because there were some simple world building things that could have easily been resolved, could have easily not have holes poked through them with just a little bit more intentionality. But the author didn't want to do that. He wanted to focus on the thing that he wanted to focus on and didn't really focus on making the world more stable. And that's fine. He accomplished what he wanted to accomplish, and he accomplished it really, really well, and I still really enjoyed this book. It made me laugh a lot. It made me smile a lot. It made me feel all the warm fuzzies. When I closed the book, I was smiling, and I was really happy that I read it. So it is a book that I really recommend for the warm fuzzies and for the good feelings. There were things that I nitpicked, but I still had a really good time reading it. So there you go. That's my review, my spoiler-free review for both of those books. I'd love to continue talking with you. I'd love to continue talking with you more about it in the comments. I post videos every Tuesday through Friday. I'll see you guys again soon.